Welcome to No Excuses. My name is Mary Fran, and today we are going to do my favorite video, and that is the books that I read. This week I actually read 4, but I'm going to review 3 extras because they've been just sitting here needing to be reviewed, and I want to add them so that I have a full year of what I did read, what I did. So I'm going to share them. The first one I'm going to talk about today is my nonfiction. I picked up a nonfiction book for the 75 Hard Challenge, and I'm going to be honest with you and say I still have not yet figured out what the purpose of this book was. I don't know. Seriously, I haven't figured it out. This book was like a cross between, hey, look at me, I have this friend, and this is what happened, and that's what happened. That's kind of what I got out of it. It was a lot of her saying, you know, I met this friend and this is what happened. Now, she did talk about some of the negative characteristics of these friends and these relationships. Maybe a little bit of know your worth as a friend, do this, then the other. But for the most part, it was her talking about her friendships. It just rubbed me wrong. Maybe I was just in the wrong frame of mind to read it. I don't know. I can't really figure it out. If you've read this book, let me know, because did I miss something? I don't know. The next book I read was called The Girls in the Attic. This book is set in World War II, and it's about a young German military gentleman who is wounded in the war. And he goes home to his mama's house to recover. He's only like 21. He's very young. And when he gets there, he finds out that his mother is harboring the enemy. She is keeping some young Jewish girls in her house. Obviously, mayhem ensues because as a German officer, of course he doesn't want Jewish women in his house because, you know, that makes him guilty, and he knows the punishments and the crime and all that. And he had bought into all of Hitler's propaganda. And slowly but surely, of course, his feelings change. It's a good thing. And he actually shows them running from their life because this is taking place at the very end of the war, and the Allies are bombing all the cities, and the Russians are coming in and exacting revenge on the Germans for what they did to them. And so it's a really good run for your life book. There is death, there is destruction, there is arguments, there is love, there is a little bit of everything. It was a good book. I would rank it a high 3, definitely a high 3. The next book I read was Our Little Secret. And this is a story about a woman who has a secret. And that secret is that she cheated on her husband. Her life is falling apart. She would love to get back and have her relationship with her husband be renewed and feel great. But she has this gentleman who she cheated with, and he is not wanting to let her go. This one, I'm going to be honest with you, is a bit of a trigger for me. Cheating is a trigger, so I struggled with it. And in the midst of that trigger and the struggle, you know, you wanted this lady to win. You like the character. I mean, you like her. Even though she's a cheater, you like her. And so you want things to end happily for her, because you're invested in this character. You want her to be happy. But then on the same note, I'm sitting there going, but she's a cheater and she needs to pay for her crimes. I struggled. I really struggled. Added to that, at times the book moved a little slow. So I'm going to rank this a low 3. It was a solid read, but it was a lower 3. And the reason I'm still giving it a 3 and not a 2 is because I think some of my feelings are being portrayed onto it because of the cheating aspect. So that's why I'm going to be fair and still give it a 3, a low 3 though. The last book I read was called The Perfect Home. This is about 3 families who move to a community that's supposed to be safe. It's supposed to have all the amenities. It's supposed to have everything in the world. And they all move there and they meet. And the 3 mothers become friends, and their children, who are about the same age, also become friends. Now, the blurb on the book talks about how it's the safe community. It's everything this, until the one girl goes missing. So I started reading. They start setting it up and introducing the characters. And I'm like, I'm all on board with this. This is great. Introducing the characters, wonderful, blah, blah, blah. And the story just goes on and on and on and on. And it kind of gets to the point where I'm just like, when is she going to disappear? Disappear already. Poof, disappear. Please. The girl didn't disappear until 71% of the way through the book. And see, I read digitally, so I know it was 71% exactly because I looked down and was like, oh, she's finally gone. Yay! It took a long time. And as I'm reading, and I know kind of what's supposed to happen, and the main blurb that they put on there, I'm just like sitting there going, when are we going to get there? When are we going to get there? Let's get there. So I thought it was a little drawn out, thought it was a little delayed. Because of that, it also took me a little bit longer to read, or at least it felt like it took me a little bit longer to read. I don't know. It was still a solid read. It wasn't a high, it wasn't a low. It was still just a solid read. I have no problem with that. I'm going to rank it a solid 3. It is interesting how it turns out, but it all happened in that last like 20% of the book. So take it as you like, but there it is. So those are the books that I actually read this week. But for continuity and to actually have a true list of the books that I've read this year, I want to talk about 3 books that I picked up at my mom's house. Picked up Bits and Pieces of My Life, My 90 Years in Short Stories, and Homeward Bound. All 3 of these books are written by B. Toms. Now, to give you a little bit of backstory, B was adopted by the Klingon family. And she grew up, and she was well into her adulthood when my father came to live with my grandparents and was adopted. So they never had a really close relationship because she was busy raising her family at the same time my father was busy growing up. In fact, some of my father's, adopted nieces and nephews are his age. So growing up, I knew who she was. I met her, of course, but we really didn't have any kind of relationship. But I have recently gotten interested in ancestry and looking to see about my father's ancestry because, he's adopted, see what I can find. So I actually did that. And in doing that, I found out it is so fascinating to try to find your family and try to find information. And while we were cleaning my mom's house, I saw these and my brother was like, I don't want them. They were signed by her, they're everything. But I picked them up because I'm like, you know what? Her stories, maybe she'll have some information, not only about my father, but maybe she'll have some information about my adopted family, and I can, glean some information for my ancestry records. So I picked up the books. And of course, the first thing I read was the page about Alan, which talks about her family adopting a little boy. I read that and I kind of knew that I really could not trust much of what B wrote because my father's story was totally incorrect. She got my mom's name wrong either. Oh, he married a wonderful lady named such and such. Not my mom's name. So I realized very, very early on that you had to kind of take her information with a grain of salt. But I did read through them trying to get information, and I was able to glean some information. I was able to glean some information that I was then able to go back and verify through birth certificates, through online news articles, through some information. Some of it I have not been able to verify, and there's some stuff that my brother was like, that's just virtually impossible. And what that is apparently one of my father's uncles was a big man, about 300 pounds, and he was on the back of his train because he would work for the railroad, and the train backed up and crushed him against the station. And my brother started laughing. He's like, the coupler would have kept that from happening. Now, in my research, he did die in a train accident, but not exactly by being crushed because he was a fat man. So I was able to verify some of the information I'm not, and I know that my father's information is only partially correct. So it was still neat to read about family. It was still neat to read about, what would be my cousins growing up and, second cousins and all that. So I did read these. I read them more along the lines for informational purposes, but they were also a little bit of humor. So anyway, I also read these 3 this year. So there you have it. Those are the books that I read. I am tickled to share them with you. Let me know in the description if you've read any of these. And in the meantime, get out, read, and have fun. No excuses.